everybody, let's actually, we're going to do a little bit of a spin on our bow exercises. We're always going to start with that because we're going to use them a lot today, I hope, if I don't get talking too much. So instead of, well, we could do just a couple. Let's just run through the little sequence of 4 bowings. I'm totally out of tune because the car was driving through all kinds of climate. And it won't stay in tune at all now. So just a nice couple of down bows going deep into the string from the air. Mind your approach, go in like an airplane and go deep down into the tarmac. Just right, one more of those. Try to avoid making a beautiful gesture and then flattening out like a flat tire when you hit the string. That you really want to just keep going.
Would you move back just a little bit so we can see your whole bow?
And as you press down, make sure you can see the bow heading towards the hair from your pressure as you put more pressure on the string. You should be able to see that stick bending down to the hair. If you cannot, your bow might be a little too tight. You do want to have some flex in the bow. The bow is the more flexy partner. You can't change anything about the tension of the string because that's a pitch issue. But you need one partner between the string and the bow. You need one of those partners to be the yielding partner. And to some degree, that's the bow. Yeah, the string goes down a little bit when you push down, but you want the bow to be a little bit more flexible. Okay, let's do a couple of the up bows, just the lower half, same kind of gesture. Gentle entry, immediate crescendo. In motion, don't stop. Just go right. It does not have to move fast. Go deep and release. Okay, now we're going to do, trying to make one dynamic shape. Tiny little up bow. Tiny little up bow first. Start with a short note. Little tiny up bow. So you start very close to the frog. And then a big crescendo into the down bow. It's amazing how much dynamic you can get out of a very small amount of bow. Right? There's maybe 2 to 3 inches, but a big rise in the crescendo. Right? And the last one, which is the down bow with the little drifting away up bow. Very slow bow, very deep, and release. You don't need to go to the tip, just... Right, good, okay. So now we're gonna just do a quick little fun thing, which is, I'm gonna say a silly word and we're gonna try to bow it. We're gonna talk about how would you bow that word. Let's start with the word, I'll do an easy one that I saw today, chevron. Well, obviously I saw that today, a lot of chevron. I saw a lot of chevron. So how are you going to bow that? It's going to be up, down, or down, up? Chevron. Chevron, right. So the down bow is the she and the up bow is the ron because that's the weaker syllable. So chevron, chevron, right? Okay, now we have another one. We have holiday. So how are we going to bow that? Holiday. Is it holiday or holiday?
Down, up, up.
So the downbeat is the holiday. Down bow, holiday. Holiday.
Oh.
Holiday. Right? And since you don't say holiday, you say holiday, it has to go holiday, holiday. Okay, now I'm going to say something also almost true, but not quite yet. I'm tired. I'm tired. How are we going to bow that? Ah, I see somebody. Who's that? Who's that over there? That is Christine Brandis. Christine Brandis has a fine line on I'm tired. I'm tired, right? I'm tired. Ooh. So I'm is the I am but tired. I am tired. I am tired. And there's tired, which we just had, down up. So I'm tired, right? So I recommend that next time you warm up on your own name and figure out how to bow your own name, or Google, try to find a really obscure word that you've never heard before and bow that. And that way you'll improve your vocabulary and your bowing technique at the same time. So that's kind of fun. And I was just thinking about Christine Brandis. You notice there's like it looks like a down, up, right? Pretty straightforward with the name Christine Brandis, but Christine, that teen part, that has this little kind of backbite to it, Christine. It's not like Christine. It's not like, or pristine. It's not that either, like pristine. No, Christine Brandis, no. Okay, so it's a good thing I know her well. Christine. So there's a little backbite. So that's different from Brandis, right? Brandis is very much that bowing number 4. Waba, Paba, right? But Christine's got that little attitude.
So would you do a double? Would you do a double take? Would you do up, down, up?
I would probably not. Chris is such a strong beginning. I'm always going to do a down bow on Chris. I could conceivably just be more likely to go Christine, kind of almost equalize them just a little bit, but it would still be down up.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Brandis, right? Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into some music and talk about this and that. There's so many things. How could you all just pop up your hands if you happened to have watched that Bieber video?
I didn't know.
Not everybody did. Oh, good. That means that we can have fun in the after party, playing I have a couple of very fun videos, but I don't want to take time out of actually looking at the music. Okay, Lolly, could you go ahead and share up the Bieber enunciation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hold on just a moment. Let me do that.
And while she does that, Lynn, would you just make a comment for everybody about what you're interested in learning about how to perform this?
Let me try this one more time. I want to share just that frame. There it is. Okay, does that look all right?
Yeah, we're going to want
to get closer to it. And
well, the problem is that I know that Lynn made a comment about getting from section to section. So let me, so we have the whole sonata, right?
You had me pull out, yeah, several pages.
Yeah, it's all there, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lynn, could you tell everybody what your questions or your interest is here? I can't hear Lynn. What happened to Lynn?
Is she muted?
No, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah, I have 2 questions tonight. The first one is just in the first 2 measures, I understand the declamatory feel for the A and then going up to the D, but it begins again, and then dum-da-dum. I can't figure out the bowing for that. And then you have my other question, which is getting from section to section with showing affect, but not making a rift in the fabric of the entire piece.
Great, fabulous questions. Okay, so at the very beginning, so you have this atmospheric first note. Notice that it's in cut time, which basically means that you don't want a strong middle, right? When you have 4 beats in a bar, 1 is strong and 3 is fairly strong, 2 and 4 are weak. In cut time, you only have 2. So the downbeat is strong, and then not so much anything else. So there are half the number of strong beats as there are beats in a bar. You can think of it that way, right? Because half of them are weak. So half are strong. So at the beginning, sorry, I'm so out of tune. So the things you notice first are this long note at the beginning, and there's that very long version of bowing 1, right?
Yes.
Very atmospheric, shapely note, and then these tiny little ornamental notes, falling figures. So, right? So I would bow it as it comes, except for the very last note, which needs to be another up bow. Now you notice there's a huge interval after the third beat, before the last beat or last quarter. So you can really almost pick your bow up there. It's kind of 2 gestures. One of them, dare I say it, the opening 5 notes is a bowing 4.
Understood.
Strong with a succession of weak notes after. So there's an extension of bowing 4. Just one little note that's weak, but right?
Yeah.
All those notes trail away from the strength of the first note, right? And then something new happens, a new bit of an idea, which is basically an extension of bowing 3.
Yes.
Unaccented notes that lead forward. So 2 up bows are very useful there. Sorry, I got the crunchies here. I'm so out of tune. So, and so on and so forth. Does that answer the question about the bowing?
Perfectly. Thank you.
You can actually kind of see that if you just like look at that first bar and you say, if you're trying to find the right glasses to comprehend it with, you see long note, falling tiny notes, one group of things, big interval, a weak beat, a repeated note leading to yet another one of those Ds on a strong beat, on the next downbeat. So it's kind of laid out for you if you're able to look at it right? Big long note, falling ornamental notes, leading Ds to the strongest of the Ds.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Now, if we can we scroll down, Lolly, about two lines or so? We're looking. Keep going. Keep going. Are you worried, Lynn, at the bottom? Hang on, Lolly. Stop for a second. Go back to the end of the first page. Keep going. Yeah, perfect. Are you at all interested in the middle of this section, or are you more interested in getting out of the preludium and into the aria?
I'm interested in getting from any section to any other section with some grace, if I may say.
Okay, so let's take a look at this last line then. When you we're in the middle of this last line, you can see
Mm-hmm.
So there's this note, it's on the dominant, right? And it's going to go on to the dominant. You can see the A continuing in the bass in that last line. There is a tie across the A. So it's not a full stop, but it is a pause on the dominant, which is very expectant, of course, right? And
Yes.
you don't get a cadence at all. Right? You don't get a cadence in the dominant, or you don't get a deceptive cadence. You just get a continuation of this expectation that is created by arriving at the dominant in that sort of third bar thing, the first low A in the bass and the A in the violin, right? So probably if you have a demonstrative shape, and you just fade away, then it just kind of dies. But if you say, I'm not actually done with this A thing, then what you might do to suggest that is to be a lot slower on your shape, not to just declare the A and wait, right? So that there's a magical expectancy in the note, that not just a declarative force and then a decay, but you just spin out the note slowly, let it grow slowly, and then at some point you launch into that. So it has all to do in this particular moment with how you shape that A.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Let's take a look at the next little join. Scroll down again, Lolly, please. Keep going. Let's see. Let's jump to the very end of this the second page where it said, that's it. No, that's it. That was perfect right there. Variatio at the end of the line there. So this is where you get the little aria and a bunch of variations. I'll see it. So this is much more of a final kind of closure. You're done with the prelude. This is a big structural moment where you move into the heart of the piece, which is this little theme with its variations, right? And he's making sure you get educated by giving you the bass line without any tune at all, right? So that's a very, it's a very educational approach. He's saying, this is what we're going to vary. This is the thing this is the chord pattern that is going to be varied here. So first pay attention to this. So when you come to the end of the prelude, in that third bar, I think you can be just as and again, what you're looking at, shaping the note, this does not seem, again, like a place where you want to just go, yeah, ba, bum, bum, pa, and then taper away. But again, just create a sense of arrival and satisfaction and finishing. And then you don't have to worry about anything because it's up to your harpsichordist or your organist or whoever's playing with you to launch the next thing. So you just finish. You just finish and you don't have anything to do with the next business. You finish with your bass player and just drop out of the picture. You're done until you come in with that aria. So you don't have to worry too much about that. Does that make sense to you?
Perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay, let's scroll on to the end. Let's see. Here's the aria right there. That's good. So and there is a repeat. It's a good thing because it's an extremely short thing, right?
Yes.
This is so short that I wouldn't make a big deal about the ending, right? It hardly merits a strong or big ending, right? So I would just be very simple about it. Just da-dum, da-dee-dum, pa-dum, bi-dim, pa-da, bum-pee-dum, ba-dee-dum, ba-pim-brium, da-da. Just go right on. I don't think you need to do anything particular there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Let's scroll to the next little, let's take a look at okay, let's take a look at this one here where it says adagio at the beginning of the line, at the last line of this page. So coming to, can you scroll up just a tiny bit? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pa 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 pee pee pom pom. You notice he gives you, after you've been racing around on those 16th notes, he gives you two very poised quarter notes. Yum pom. I think here you do need to take time because you're not going to go on in the same tempo, right? You're going to say something quite different. So take plenty of time. Finish. Just take all the time in the world. Now I'm going to just, let's see, I'm just going to pop back here for a second because it's people were such prisoners of the music going left to right, right? We're prisoners of it to some degree. And it's too bad because it doesn't give us a full range of behavior. Because the music may look like it's going on because it's just how printing is. They can't like tell you to stop. But here you want to stop. So pa pee pee pa pee 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 pom.
Yes. Yes.
Stop. And then breathe with a new gesture, right? Finishing is one of the most powerful things you can do rhetorically. Everybody breathes with you if you breathe. If you're agitated or suspended in your finishing gesture, you're waiting, you're anticipating, there's no closure, there's no repose, right? So finishing visually as well as sonically, orally, is super helpful. You create, basically, if you're waiting to go on, you can't create a new thing. If you stop, you have freedom to create the new gesture.
Yes.
Good. Okay, let's move on to the next little join here. That gets wild and crazy. So here we have, yeah, go a little further. Good, okay. Yeah, there, here we are kind of at the, yeah, let's go, yeah, one line back there, perfect. Okay, so, yeah, so I think something, at this point, we want to recreate something of the beginning, right? This is kind of like the postlude. This is kind of like you've had the heart of the story, and now, in fact, if you're going to take the story to an extreme, which I kind of like doing, the opening, of course, is the angel descending.
Yes.
This is now the angel flying away because he has told the story. He's come to deliver his message. Gabriel is done with his message, and in fact, I think it's just one of the coolest things ever that Bieber decided that Gabriel's message. I mean, it's an astonishing message, right?
Yes.
So I just love the way Bieber has done this. He starts out, he doesn't even start with Gabriel. Gabriel knows he's about to blow Mary's mind, right?
Yes, indeed. Truly.
He totally knows this. He's got to know this because it's not every day that you go down to some mortal and tell her she's going to have God's baby. This is such an amazing story. So he's very careful. He doesn't want to freak her out. I think that's why you get this gentle little educational thing. He's coming in very gently with this news. And then he makes this simple little aria, tries to tell it just real cleanly, real simply, but he knows it's just a shocking piece of information. And so then he has to try again because she's standing there with her mouth open, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then he has to find another way to say it. So he tells her several times in all this different language. And you can tell that he's warming to his subject as he goes on. He's talking about things like the baby you're going to have is going to be the savior of mankind. This is a glorious thing, right? And the glory of it and all the wonderful elements of this story really come to the fore in each iteration, in each variation, in which he attempts to make clear what this message really is. Make it clear for the glorious thing that it is. So yeah, I think it's a particularly fine choice of form for this particular piece of the story. It's wonderful. Okay, so again, when you come to the end of the last variation, before you start the postludium, before the angel flies away, you actually probably need some gravity. Just that there's just a moment where you think that if you were Gabriel, you're looking at Mary and you think, okay, I think she's got this. I think she's got it now. I've done my mission is complete. I can fly off home now, right? So give that just a moment to sink in, and then be off with you. So wings start to flutter again, right? And he's just kind of hovering up, levitating off the ground, but not getting very far right away. That's what those little rests are. And then finally he gets going, right? So it's a pretty spectacular piece of writing, I think. I'm really glad you chose the piece. Are there any other questions before we move on?
Yes, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear the last 3 or 4 measures of the piece, see how you bring it together. I have particular trouble with the last 2 notes, what to do, how simple to make it, how complicated.
Let's see if I can even play it. I've got a little problem with my middle finger. I have trigger finger in my middle finger. So please forgive if it doesn't sound good. Not to mention the intonation. Let's say, I'm gonna have to put my glasses on too. Okay. yeah, I'm sorry, my finger's locking up. I would do some kind of a little ornament going from the last B flat. Some kind of little bowed out, mostly bowed out little thing. It's a little bit long to be just sitting.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's most helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've helped me open my eyes. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, just the second to last bar. I just noticed that there's a pattern in hiding in there. Right?
Oh.
So it's not just a, so I would articulate, that's information of some sort. It's emphasis. Ha, 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 ha. Wah, 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 right?
Yes.
It's not just some, it's not just a
No.
string of notes, because
No.
there is that little embedded pattern. So that's where you want to have your spectacles, your pattern spectacles on, right? To see that little D, B flat down an octave, D, B flat one more time down yet another octave. Okay, cool. Can we move on, Lolly, to the Telemann canonical? Aha! Okay, so this is a time where I want everybody's going to need their violins shortly. Can I ask? Hold on one second. I don't have the names of who submitted these handy. So whoever submitted this, could you say what your issue is or your question or?
I submitted it, Elizabeth, and it was mostly actually the second movement. We can look at the first movement too, but I had some questions in the second movement, which is just the most eerie, beautiful thing, I think. And so actually another really excellent violinist, I heard her say that this should be played with this fancy, French bowing style where, lift up and to the frog. And I was just wondering if you could help maybe just show exactly how it's done without crashing on the strings. Like, especially with those, in those dotted rhythms, when you go back to the frog and just make it, smooth at the same time as, very dotted.
Yeah. So it's basically, let's see if I can learn it real quick, and then we can do a visual. So. Okay, I'll probably get some notes wrong, but can we make me visible, Lolly, for a second?
Yes, I'm going to stop the share, right? Can you?
Yes, just for a second, yeah. So, right, so what we have here is bowing one. Right, yeah. Let's everybody just try this, and what we're going to do we're going to leave the fingers out of the picture. So what we're going to do is just go open D string. And just try to embody the downness and declarativeness of the down bow, and this kind of little shruggy, little Gallic shrug on the up bow, right? You can do serious face for the down bow and light-hearted face for the up bow. Yeah, I saw somebody doing that. Yes. You know, the Frenchman in the Bermuda with his Gallic shrug, just wah, boom, schwa, boom, schwa, right? Now we'll put the fingers in. So you have E and then B and G. So it's and again, always just this kind of a scooping, rounded stroke while you're in the string. One more time. One of the big things that people do with this music, should do with this music, is use very little bow. Very little bow. If you want to have a very quick lesson on Italian versus French style, Italians like lots of bow and fast bowing. French people, small bow, very, very chintzy with the bow, but very articulate, going up and down, in and out of the string. Yeah, Stephen, good one. Yeah. So you're really, again, you're really getting the most out of the tiny syllables. Just think how beautiful French is when it's spoken, how much care there is in each little syllable that they utter, and how proud they are of how they sound. Oh, yes. And how awful it is when you try to speak French to a French person because you don't sound right. So you really don't need more than the first 8 inches max for a gesture like this. So I dare say, in my own little proud way, that bowing 1 and bowing 2 have the answer to the French style of this movement. Okay? Is there anything else in this movement that you would like to check in on, or?
No, that was really mainly what I was interested in. Thank you.
Okay, great. The last thing I just want to say about it is in the end of the first line there. Oh, it's an expectant. Basically, look at this. You have tonic, dominant, version of the tonic, first inversion version of the dominant. So tonic, dominant, and then you get, oh, not really the tonic and not the dominant, a new element. So a rising minor sixth, which if you were present at the second class, you would learn this is an exclamatio, actually. Not that the French would have bothered to define it as such, but it is certain in this case, because of the rest that comes after it, it's also a little bit of an abrupt show where the music suddenly stops where before it had been going on. And so it creates a sense of anticipation. So you probably don't want to go, just let that note be inconsequential. It's a rising figure leading to nothing, a bridge to nowhere. So you probably want to bring that note out, actually, even though it's on a weak beat. This is a good example of what I mentioned but didn't give you examples of. When the imaginary friends don't agree, here we have a rising figure. So melody likes the higher note, right? And it's a rising, but it's on a weak beat. So Rhythm Boy is kind of going, why are you being so loud on my weak beat, right? But then he's kind of brought into the fold because there's this cool rest on a main beat right after that note. And then there's this thing that was supposed to happen on the second beat and did not. So that satisfies Rhythm Boy. But there's a little moment of strangeness there to be so strong on a weak beat rhythmically. So okay, that was fun too. And we'll do some more playing. I think we have a Corelli coming up next. So could you tell us your question about this one?
Sure.
Oh.
Hi, it's me. It's Ruby. Well, I think you had mentioned it before. Like, this is one of those pieces where it's the same thing all the way through, and it's kind of hard to figure out. Like, well, how do I give shape to this?
Okay, this is
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. All right. So as you're playing through it, I think about it this way. when you have no melody, which you don't have a melody, you have a bunch of figuration. And the figuration is simply figuration within a given harmony. And the harmonies change every half bar roughly, sometimes a little quicker, but mostly every half bar, right? Like da da dee da 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 dee da, that's 2 beats, and da dee 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 da dee dee dee, that's 2 more beats. So half bar of tonic, half bar of dominant, ya dee dee dee. There's just 1 of A minor, wa bee ba ba, that's 1 of D major, ya ba bee ba ba bee, and 1 half bar of dominant. So yeah, basically the harmonies are treading along at roughly a pace of 1 to 2 to the bar, sometimes a little bit more. So going back to that picture of what Harmony Girl is interested in, when you play the tonic, it's like Harmony Girl sitting at home. She's okay, I like home, home's okay. But then you play the dominant and it's like, oh, the doorbell rang, right? So she's at the door now. And then, oh, A minor, she's really looking out the door now. Ya-da-da-da-ta-da-dee, 5 of 5, a D major, 5 of 5. That's really exciting. She's, what's going on outside, right? And then nothing happens. So she just goes back indoors in the second line. Oh, and there's another little interesting thing. A beautiful high note, the highest note so far. And an F major chord, which we have not had. So basically, as you can see, the silliness that I'm trotting out here has a point. And the point is that you're going to be guiding your interest points here entirely through the strength of the harmonies, the strength or weakness, the suggestiveness, the payoff in the harmony is the way to shape something like this, right? So when it's tonic, so you don't need to start forte. You already want to be a little stronger in the middle of the first bar, and probably the most at the beginning of the second bar, and then let go of it at the end of the second bar, all right? And then you're back to the tonic. So you can just taper away at that second bar. Woo, the high A is good. And then there's a very cool thing that happens in bar 4. The harmonies go whooping along. There's one kind of almost every 8th note. Right? So a huge amount of frenetic activity leading into yet another little C major moment. So you can, again, back away. When you see that tonic coming, it's not so interesting. Gosh, it's just not that interesting. It's the other stuff that's interesting. Let's see, I'm just, can you scroll down a little bit, Lolly? I just want to look at the, just like 2 lines. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So you'll be quite soft at the end of the first line, tapering away into the second line, rising up to that high A, and then dropping down to the middle of the 4th bar. And then you start the 5th bar, a little more interesting because you're in the dominant again. Ooh, another high note. The B is even better than the A in the previous line. So I think you can launch yourself up for that high B. So you can see the picture that's emerging here is the more distant the harmonies are from the tonic, the more compelling they are. And there's the little quasi-melodic element of range. When you're down low, you probably want to be softer. And when you're rising up to those high notes, you want to make the most of those rises. So the crescendos, right? And looking at that 3rd line, that first bar there, ya ba ba bee bee ba ba bee, ya ba 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 bee ba 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 ba. There's actually kind of 2 little rises, one on the 3rd beat and one on the 4th. Ya ba ba ba, ya ba 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 ba. So you don't have to ya ba 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 ba. It doesn't have to be one solid crescendo, but 2 little undulating crescendos. You may think that that's an awful lot to ask for when you're clipping along at a good allegro, but if you just vary the amount of bow just a tiny bit, right? As you're going ya baby bee ba bee 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 ba bee 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 ba bee 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 ba 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 bee bee ba 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 ba, right? Just add and subtract bow for these little moments, and then you create a nice dynamic profile that fits the harmonic interest and the melodic profile. There's not much else to say about this. The other thing you can be looking at is what happens in the middle. You haven't had a lot of patterns yet. but when you get to the, let's see, of the lines that you can see, let's see. Yeah, if you look at the line that's the second from the bottom in your screen right now, it's a C major at the beginning. Now, there you have a little 3-part episode. Yeah, ba 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 beep ba ba. That's the first part. Yeah, ba 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 beep ba ba. That's the second part. And then yeah, ba 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 ba. And he varies the pattern on that last beat. That is a warning to you that the episode is over. Usually, you'll get some kind of little change. Quite often, you'll get a little change somewhere in the last iteration of a pattern that should trigger your understanding that you're done with that pattern and something new is going to happen. And those are very important moments when you've identified a pattern, which I hope you would identify. You've got your pattern seeking glasses on. He doesn't go ya ba 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 or ya ba 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 ya ba 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 ba, right? You want to notice that it's a pattern that is varied the third time. And then you want to deliver that information because that is actually important information. But it may sound strange to say that just a tiny little change in interval or pattern or up or down can make a difference, but it does. It does. If you play those different notes on that third time through that little pattern, if you play that the way you played the other ones, you lose the informational aspect that the third one has changed, and is now you're going to deliver something different. Ya-pa-pee-pa-pa. So I'd be inclined at that point, at the end of that line, to deliver a small crescendo, where before, in the end of the previous bar, in the middle of the next bar, I might have been falling away. Ya-pa-pa-pa-pa-pee-pa-pa. Kind of less. Ya-pa-pa-pee-pa-pee-pa-pa less. But this time, ya-pee-pee-pee-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa, that you actually take a crescendo to get yourself to the next thing, right? Okay, so those are the kind of 3 organizational things that you can try to become conscious of and use. Good harmonies versus uninteresting harmonies get more attention dynamically, and you build up to them and you descend away from them. High profile notes in the melodic range can be very exciting and brilliant, and you're looking for patterns. Deliver the pattern in its structure. In this particular pattern that we looked at just now, it's a 2-beat structure. Daka tika taka taka, taka tiki taki taka, taka tiki taka tika ta, right? And notice when it changes. And if it doesn't change, if he delivers it exactly the same, but goes on to something new, change it yourself. Change the dynamic intention on the last iteration. Does that sort of help you get a handle on how to organize the movement?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Welcome. That was fun. Okay, let's move on to Schmelzer. Okay, could the Schmelzer lady or gentleman please tell us what you would like to think about here?
Hi. So sort of like the Annunciation Sonata, with variation form, the difficulty I usually have is trying not to make all the variations sound the same, but also still have a coherent flow to it. And I understand that this is like a fantastic style, and I suppose that is due to like the varying elements of it. Like it has, different surprises or like pretty abrupt contrasts and things, but I'm having trouble phrasing my question. It's like one can very easily fall into, I think, the dilemma or the trap of like making it sound fantastical because you know that it's fantastical, or like does that make sense? Like making it a caricature of what it actually is.
Right, and that is there you have a point I can speak to. That's great. Basically, don't worry about fantastical. We're going to let the fantastical aspects of this take care of themselves. What you should, I think, always want to do is look at what the figuration is telling you? What are the gestures? What is the character of a particular variation? And then you want to deliver that. You start from what you see, looking at the variations. I don't think you can go wrong. The fantastical aspect and all the contrasts, they are written in. If you're looking at the figures correctly, I think, or imaginatively and in a vivid way, you're going to have it cannot help but be fantastical because the contrasts are all written in to the music.
Okay.
So you want to just sort of examine each little variation, or at least some of them, and sort of talk about the characters and articulations. Great.
Sure. And I had like the second page. There was one in particular that just I was having trouble rhythmically. I think I understand the intention of it. If we can go to the second page.
Sure. Okay, so at the beginning, the first thing that's peculiar about this piece is that it's all pretty normal, nice 4-bar phrase, and then you have oops, where's my 4th bar, right? I remember the first time I read it, you know how I played it? The first time I read it, I went, I created a 4th bar.
I did too, actually.
There you go. So that is already just peculiar. That is peculiar. He deliberately sets you up to think you're going to get a 4-bar phrase the second time. He even gives you a classic short, long phrase in the first 4 bars. First 2 bars are basically the same kind of thing. Wah, dee wah, dee dum ba da, dee wah, dee da 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 ba da. Oops, done. Right? So that's peculiar. And you have to find some way to deliver that. That's the first kind of oddness that needs delivery to the audience. So, the beautiful cascading melodic line. I would really be very deliberate and clear that you're not giving them that extra bar. We kind of would be pretty forceful. It makes a great contrast to the flowing downward scale of the previous 2 bars, right? You've caught everybody's attention. If you just go, there's nothing there. It's just like anticlimactic. So you have to make that moment special, because it is, right? Okay, then. So when you look at this, what do you see when you look at this next line? Just tell me literally what you're seeing. What are the elements that you see that seem to be what he's playing with?
So I see basically a pattern being set of 1, 2, 3. The first 4 measures comprised of 2 elements. One is a stepwise thing with without a downbeat, and then you have like the leap into an octave leap up. So you have like a contrast of 2 ranges in addition to a contrast of rhythms between the 2. And that whole thing is part of a stepwise downward motion, which is again mirrors the first theme. So shape-wise, it's the same, like a downward motion, but with new elements of like spices.
Brilliant. That was a brilliant exposition of exactly what's going on. So in terms of very specific articulations, bumpy, you start out with a repeated note, right? Bumpy, so articulate the first one. Bumpy, and then a melodic delivery of the next 3. Bumpy, big leap, articulate. And if you felt like trilling on that you could. Here's the thing that's kind of fun about adding a trill. If you added an upper note trill, you'd have a repeated A, right?
Yeah.
And then you would articulate the first A so that you didn't run it together into the appoggiatura of the trill. If you do a main note trill, You have a little more latitude to be legato. Bum-be-da-dum, ba-dim-ba-dum, bum-be-da-dum, bum-ya-im-ba-dum, right? Well, any number of possibilities. If you don't put a trill in at all, you still have that legato possibility. Bum-be-da-dum, ba-dee-da-dum, bum-be-da-dum, bum-ya-da-dum, bum-ya. Okay? So, there's no right or wrong answer here, as long as you acknowledge the big interval and the repeated note. The rest of it is basically conjunct motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. And then the fun part is when he doubles up on one of the versions in the third bar, bum da dum bum da da, right? Suddenly you do those in a row after alternating before, and then pa da 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 da. And again, this time he does something really weird. He changes it up and puts the dotted figure on the downbeat in the last bar, yum da da, and at the same time turns the direction around. Right? He's going up now with it instead of down. There's an odd sort of perverse little symmetry that is created, that the later dotted figure is on the downward motive, and the shifted over dotted figure to the strong beat is on the rising figure. So very, very, canny, simple things that he's doing to make it interesting. So since you've got such a good analytical eye here, you really just want to make sure that we can hear what you understand. Right? That is the whole business right there. Because once you understand something, what the elements are, how they work, where articulations should be, you just have to show us, and then we're on board. So you're going to have probably falling away on your downward figures and quite a bit of rising dynamic on your upward figures, right? And then he tosses one more little wrinkle in at the beginning of the next line. Let's see. That's it's borrowed from what he did, right? Because we do have two conjunct notes. Look, there's three notes. It's like those. Right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually the way he began
That's
this
true.
question, right? But it doesn't feel that. It's cloaked because there's no rest or no lead, whatever. So it's transformed into something slightly different. So just enjoy that. Okay, and the next figure, there's not much. The next variation, there's not that much to really say because you can see what the figure is. That sounds like Bach. Sounds like the third
Oh yeah,
suite.
it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yada-dum. There is one thing that's important to notice. Do you see? Everybody, take a look at that first bar. Ta-da-dum, ta-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dee. So, except for the missing downbeat, is it all really the same? Da-da-dum, 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 da-da-da? The answer is yes. Rhythmically, it's all the same. Da-da-dum, just a missing downbeat. Da-da-dum, 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 da-da-da. But in terms of note relationships, is it all the same? Is there one little kink somewhere? And I know you can't answer because you're all muted, and that's just so mean. Questions of people who are muted. I'm sorry. I shouldn't even laugh. Oh, say yada-dum. Repeated note. Da-da-dum. Not a repeated note. So there's one little repeated note going in the middle of the second beat, right? Yada-dum, da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, biddy-dee. But the rest is conjunct. So he's kind of saying parada, paradi, diggity, diggity, parada, pagadi, diggity, diggity, pagada, diggity, pagada, diggity, pagada, diggity, 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 pagada, diggity, right? So if you take this business of note relationships really seriously, you can find that it is phenomenally structural for your phrasing. You're going to have a little articulation, pa-da-dum, gap, da-da-dee-da-da, sing it out, da-da-da. Big gap, ya-da-da, gap, da-da-da-da-da-dee-da-da-dee, gap, ya-da-dee-dee-dee-dee, gap, ya-da-dee-dee-dee-dee, gap, ya-da-da, gap, da-dee-da-da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee, gap, ya-da-dee-da-dee-da, gap, yum-pa-dee-dee-da, gap, ya-da-dee-da-dee-da, gap, bum-pa-dee. The whole variation will organize itself if you pay attention to those gaps, the little ones and the big ones. Where it's conjunct, just bow it out and enjoy it in a melodic way, and otherwise really pay attention to those little gaps, right? That's a cool variation. I love that. Okay, can we go to the next page of it? Thank you. And then as you see, he's building up. He started so simply, ta dee 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 bum bra dee dum bum pee dee da ta da da da, and then da da dum da da dum, and now ha da 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 da. Right? It's just like completely chattering now. So again, the same principle holds. Look at note relations. Bum pee dee dum bum pee da dum bum pa da 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 dee dee dum bum pa da dum bum pa da dum bum pa da dee 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 dum. The patterns emerge very nicely, and they emerge better if you articulate the notes that are distant from each other and are more legato on the conjunct notes. The pattern will just pop right out into the listener's ear in a meaningful and engaging way. So I'm then look at the second line of what you can see on the second part. It's just silly. It's just silly. Yeah. It's all short stuff, right? It's all just arpeggiated, and it can be as short and light and cute, and it's a giant descending episode, sort of repeated figure. Goes on for awfully long time. Yeah, he da da tika tika tum da tum, and then it's gone. It's that silly third 3-beat structure. Yaka tika 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 tum tika tum. Boom, gone. Right, very funny. Where was the issue you were having with the rhythm here?
I think it was further on. I mean, the next, yeah,
Okay.
that one, the last line there.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it's just a technical thing for me, but the third beat there, but that like I've had trouble with the handle as well. But the short notes beginning and then going on, I don't seem to have enough time. Like I seem to trip over my feet there.
Okay, don't play with your feet. I think you should not play the violin with your feet. Okay, so, would you just sing that again the way you just did it? You just did it fine. Just do it one more time. So how are you bowing that third beat?
I'm doing down up dum like as it comes da-dum ba-dum bum. So like
Is that the way you sang it? Did you sing it with all that articulation?
pardon me?
Did you sing it with all that articulation?
No.
No,
Like
don't bow
it's
it that
part
way.
of one.
Don't bow
Okay.
it that way. Just
That thing's sorry.
just
That
put your slurs in there. Put some slurs in there. Boy, boy, ba, boy, 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 boy. Just put slurs in. This is early 17th century rep. People were pretty casual about marking slurs. Some more casual, some others. But at the point where you're stumbling over your fingers to try to bow something out, that intuitively, when it comes out of your voice, you go boy, boy, right? You say boy, boy instead of buttala, buttala. You don't go buttala, buttala or bucketa, bucketa. You didn't even put a consonant. You went boy, boy, right? Your intuition said the gesture.
okay, that actually brings me to my second question. Is it okay to like add some slurring like that does change the phrasing a little bit, but is it okay to I mean, I don't know if I'm looking at it too theoretically, but are there certain composers which one should hesitate to add these phrasing or articulation slurs as opposed to others?
Yes, do not do it to Bach.
Okay.
That's my opinion. You can go crazy with this stuff. I have changed some of Vivaldi's, apparently Vivaldi's marks in some of his concertos, but I changed them for effect, and I changed them to maintain what I think is a vivid gesture. Bach, I tend not to have to do that because Bach, if he had time to write the slur in, they're perfect. They're perfect, and I just don't mess with them. Every once in a very great while, in some of the cantatas, you might come across something where you think he might have slurred something, and then I do it with great trepidation. I do add a slur only with great trepidation, right? But here, I think it's more about effect and the point at which you're bowing something out frantically and wrecking the fun of it, the intuitive fun that you sang intuitively so nicely, right? Right? You'll have much more fun. Just right? Just it's cute. It's just a little chirp, a couple of little chirps. So yeah, in this repertoire, I don't have any problem with finding the occasional slur as necessary to maintain your affect or be vivid or engaging, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to the, I guess we have now the Vivaldi, the last movement of that wonderful A minor 2 violin concerto. Can whoever brought this one up, could they speak to their questions?
Yes, it was me. This is start my. It was the chords at the bottom of the movement. There's two places where there's a couple of measures of very fast chordal arpeggios.
Can you tell us
Yeah,
a page
right
number
there,
or a
right
bar
there.
number?
Back up.
Back up. Bar
Back
number
up.
would be good.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what you do with those chording those.
In the top violin part?
Uh-huh.
Well, first thing you want to do is keep away out of the way. You want to stay out of the way of the second violin, because this is one of those great pieces where the second player gets a lot of goodies. And really, you're just making a textural color. So let's see. So I would just go back and forth, taya, 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 and I would probably go up towards the tip of the bow, closer to the tip. This is not
Okay.
something I do often, but you're trying to become wallpaper here, because you're kind of in the range of the second violin. So bum 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 bim bum 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 bim bum, and they're going to have to be banging those out. So you don't want your E string to be all shrieky in the way of the second part, right? So I would just sit back in a sort of piano, and very smooth, and just not too just undemonstrative, and just again, all you're really responsible for is helping the harmonies be fun. So I would move a little crescendo towards the second bar, and then back away towards the tonic and the third bar, and so on, right? The way we were talking about in Corelli. Does that kind of answer your question?
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Okay, now we have a complicated piece, the musical offering Largo, the first movement. Can the owner of this suggestion speak to the question?
That might have been me.
No, well, okay. It was the proposal was either the first or the third movement, and I opted, because I figured I'd be taking too much time on everything. I opted for the first movement. Anything particular you had a question about or an interest in hearing about?
Just basic expression, and really when because it's slow, when and if to use any vibrato on the held notes.
Well, I can answer this question because just last Friday I was in Houston and I played this very piece. So it's very fresh in my mind. Let's see. Okay, so what's nice about this beginning, you have this kind of simple bass line, yum yum bum 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 bum, yeah. So spends a lot of time on that second beat, right? He doesn't spend much time in C minor. So the first thing you've got, and then you've got this great big long note with a big trill on it on the second beat. So this is kind of unusual for a 3/4 bar. 3/4 usually the downbeat is strong, the second beat is weak. So this is not a sarabande, but in the sense of a French sarabande where you have a strong first beat and a strong second beat, but it partakes of something like that energy. So you have I would really lean on that appoggiatura. This whole piece is written in a rather gallant style. So a really long affected appoggiatura is very helpful, and a leaning in with your messa di voce, your bowing number 1, right? Just really enjoy that. And now, while you're playing that long C in the second bar, the bass line's going to move up to that beautiful E natural, which is a very pregnant note, right? You know you're going to go to F, which is, and then that'll bring the flute in. F is for flute, after all. Anyway, so you are on this long note, and you're talking about expression here. If you go from the beginning like this, right? Nothing, just kind of a declarative note, or just nothing there. That's too bad, right? So expression here is kind of a matter of sympathy. Your C wants to have sympathy with that bass line. The bass line is it's going into that fabulously colorful, meaningful E natural. So your note, your C that sits on top of the E flat and the E natural, you want that now to be shaped so that you're kind of pulling the bass player towards that E natural. You're just encouraging him to play that note, right? So you're making a shape that starts rather softly and growing towards that second beat. And at that point, here's where you might include a little vibrato. This is a very gallant style, so as you crescendo towards that second beat, you can feed in a little vibrato there. I certainly did. I have no problem with that. In fact, I think that, I don't know if I quoted Gemignani to you early on about vibrato, probably in the first class. He said at one point, he was reputed to have said, use vibrato as often as possible. He wasn't talking about little notes that, like consistent vibrato that we employ now in a lot of modern style, where even a little note is going to be vibrated. He's talking about any long note at all, probably any note that has enough time on it to permit you to get your vibrato up and running, that he thought it was a great idea. And this is in the Baroque era. This is not after the Baroque. This is like, 1730s or something. So as you move through this style, the end of the era, this piece was written very close to the end of Bach's life, sometime in the 40s, I think, when he went to visit his son, after he went to visit his son at the court of King Frederick the Great. And his son, C.P.E. Bach, who was working there, was a great devotee of something like the galant style that moved into the more passionate form of it, the Empfindsamkeit, which is akin to Sturm und Drang. There's a whole bunch of terms, and it's kind of hard to pin down exactly what all of them are about, but it's a dramatic and affettuoso style of writing. And Bach was keenly aware that his son was doing this, and he had opinions about it. And I think this whole sonata is a form of something like, an acknowledgement of his son, and maybe even a little bit of caricature in the third movement, possibly. But he's certainly also maybe just showing his son, oh, you do, this is what you do, well, I can do it too, right? A little bit of that going on. So yeah, I think that there are definitely some moments for some vibrato. Let's see if there's anything, if you have any other questions, go ahead and pop them, get them ready. I'm going to say one more thing about this opening line. There's a lot of material in terms of articulation and meaning, and sort of just the way the figures are organized. There's a lot going on here. So you have this declarative yam padim pam wai digi daya da da dia papaya paya paya paya. You need a lot of articulation in the third bar, in the second and third beats, because you've got repeated notes between each slur, right? Tiaram, piram, piram, param. So those are a succession of fairly rapid succession of little sighs. Yam, piam, piam, bam. And then ya, ira, then quite long, a long slur. Ya, a big old long note on a beautiful chord with a B natural in the bass. Ya, again, your long note needs to be a sympathetic thing of supporting the flute line above you, da ya dee 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 da, and then merging with the flute line at the beginning of the next bar, dee ya da dee ya, where you go into complete lockstep with the flute part in the fifth bar there. So always the long notes shaped, and if vibrato, you know what? Your intuitions and your body are just going to make that vibrato happen, I think, naturally. And I think you should not be alarmed by that or judgmental of it. I think it's part of the style here. Long appoggiaturas are very helpful, right? And any other
question?
Oh, I'm sorry?
I have a question. In the third bar,
Uh-huh.
where you play bang it,
Yes.
ba, with the
Uh-huh.
fourth note separated, but you didn't do that in the fourth bar. It's the
I
same.
didn't. You're so right. You're so right. And I have to try to figure out if I can find any justification. All right, the justification, if I'm only looking at the third bar, the slur that I put in was a very J.S. Bach-y kind of slur. I slurred the three notes that were conjunct, and then I separated the fourth because it was not conjunct. So tia, da, da. Then there's the second issue that I like. I'm going to have trouble justifying this when I go on and look at the fourth bar because it begins with the exact same figure. At this point where I've worked my way into a little bit of a corner, and I'm going to try to dodge out of it as follows. I want to be on a down bow on the second beat of the third bar because I don't want to bow all those things. Yeah, up, down, up, down. That feels really uncomfortable to me. I'd really rather be down, up, right? Yeah. So that's part of it. I like the slurring of ta-ya, pa-pa, ta-ya, pa-pa, ya, ba. And now, where push comes to shove for consistency, and I can't deliver consistency, I could just go tia tia pam pa ya da da dee. So at this point, it comes down to a bowing preference again for me. The figure.
I have another thought too. I'm looking at the flute part,
Uh-huh.
and actually did parallels the flute phrasing, and in that sense, it makes total sense.
Yes, in the third bar, you've got that separate note. Yeah, it's true. Longer. That's a great one. I love that argument. I wish I'd thought of it myself. But I will say that I love being on that last D at the end of the first line there. I love being on an up bow because it delivers me a big fat down bow on the big fat appoggiatura with the flute in bar 5 on the second beat. It just crushes me to be on an up bow on that appoggiatura. So I'm really trying to figure out a way to be up bow on that long D at the end of the first line.
That makes total sense. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Any other questions on this one, or?
That's good.
Okay, then we're up to our last piece. How are we doing for time, Lolly? Oh my gosh, I'm over, but that's no surprise. Okay, so this is the fabulous G minor adagio. Could somebody speak about this?
Well, it might have been mine because I said sort of any unaccompanied Bach movements.
This is the one I chose, yeah.
And I don't know that I have a specific question. I've played it, I've taught it, I have ideas, but I'm just sort of curious. part of it is how do you deal with, and of course I'm playing on a modern instrument, modern bow, but how do you deal with the chords, especially when the line is in the middle of the chord rather than the top or the bottom?
Right. Good question. Let's start with that. I'm gonna let's see. Can you make me visible, Lolly? So sorry about the tuning. So follow the line through right there from the. You can fade away from once you've heard that moment. You can fade off the C, right? So we hear the line. Oh, my fingers. Sorry, I have to warm up or this happens. And here. The line goes through to the B flat, right? You don't want to finish off up there, right? Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? So again, you acknowledge the top note, right? Just give it a little moment of grace, but don't leave the string where the line is following through. In other words, you really keep that going.
I just wanted folks to be able to see the music.
Good. Okay, somebody just called me. I'm sorry. Okay, so here we go. I want to say something about the second line here, which is one of my favorite things in all of this repertoire. I'm sorry, I just can't keep this instrument tuned. So here's what we are used to hearing. Right? That's what we're used to hearing. But that, if you would take a good close look at that first bar of the second line, that is what you're used to hearing is not what Bach wrote. Here's what Bach wrote. He wrote an E natural. Yes, he did. He did. Okay, so. And every edition since Mendelssohn, if not before, has corrected it to an E flat. And I think it's a mistake to correct it. And I'll talk about why. If you take a look at the bass line, starting at the end of the first line, yum, pom, from the G to the F, then at the beginning of the next line to the D, and if you go to the E flat already here on the second beat, then you have to just sort of hang out on that until the next downbeat to the D, right? So it's an awfully preemptive move to the E flat and a very long time sitting on it. Whereas if you go back and do what he actually wrote, G, F, bum, B, and then he tucks in the ornament, tucks a move to the very carefully marked E flat, bum, bum. You actually get a nice progression, bum, B, bum, beam, a more complete and more interesting line. The other reason, I mean, look at all the E flats. The end of the first line, there's an E flat. There's an E flat, there's another E flat, there's an E flat, right? Every single one of them is marked, and that is the habit of the time. They didn't have that modern habit where you put the accidental in and it stays to the end of the bar. They marked it every time. They did not do courtesy accidentals, so Bach, it would not have occurred to Bach to put a natural on that second quarter beat on that line, which is the third beat of the bar. It wouldn't have occurred to him to do that, but he's marked all the other ones perfectly clearly, right? And if that's not enough arguments for the fact that it should be an E natural, I've got one more. And that is that Bach was a perfectionist. He makes very few mistakes. He had oodles of time to write these pieces. He knew he was going to write a set of 6 because 6 is a perfect number. And he was a perfectionist, and the point of perfection was the glory of God. And you really think he made a mistake in the second line of the first sonata?
A note like that is crucial.
To me, it's not possible. Somehow, to me, it's just like, no, I just don't think so. I found a couple places where I think he forgot to put a slur in. I found like 2 or 3 of those. And I found a note that I want to change somewhere, I think. But by and large, it is very, very, very close to perfect. So if you're playing this piece, unless you're playing it for a modern violin competition with a bunch of high-profile judges, play the E natural. It's what he wrote. It's what the man wrote. You know, I think it's
You could even do it for modern violin.
He what?
You could do it for a modern violin competition and lean on it and go, this is what Bach wrote.
Yeah,
Basically, and how you played it, right?
Yeah,
it would be fun.
it would be fun. It's just you got to watch out. Judges are mean people, so you might get away with it. You could make your case for it.
I was going to say, at my age, I don't care about the judges anymore.
Okay, I think unless anybody has any other questions, we can come back and do questions if you have any questions. I think we don't need the scores anymore. There you are. Okay, so I'm kind of done, actually. I mean, I'm happy to take questions, or we can watch the videos for those of you who haven't seen the videos, because they're really cool. This is your chance to pop up and ask a question if you want.
Sonia here. I have a question. Hi. About the Telemann, the last week we talked about 2 down bows, and then now earlier when we talked about Telemann, you talked about using small bow. So when we were to, if I were to do that, I get very attentive, meticulous attentive on that stuff. So should I be trying less bow on 2 downs at the opening of the Telemann first movement?
Well,
or that's another exception with because I tried it this week and they kind of got a little too larger physical motion, and I wasn't so sure how much of it was acceptable or awkward.
Okay, your judge is not your physical motion per se. Your physical motion is the servant of the feeling, right? So start with the feeling. So if you have what you want to do is give those 2 voices that we talked about in the Telemann, you want to give them a character. So maybe the first voice is, tell me your troubles, dear. A big, warm, happy sound. And then this verklempt little top voice, just a little pathetic voice, right? So you don't need a big gesture. There's the big warm invitation. Something quite small.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't need to be a big thing. Or you could be, you could tweak that into sadomasochism a little bit. Pum, a little more demanding, a little more authoritarian downbeat, and a little more shrinking violet kind of upper voice. You can tweak the character any way you like, as long as it's clear and you mean it, right? And then the gesture you make is just in service of that feeling. So if you have this smaller upper voice, you have a bigger, more capacious down bow on the downbeat, and maybe you don't need a full retake, because a full retake will invite a big upper line, right?
Yeah.
But more of a continuate, so that you're kind of using the upper part of the bow for your softer, higher voice.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, so these are just tools and I have to think more up here. Gotcha.
Yeah, and feel here. You got to, you want to have a feeling concept for what you're trying to say with it.
Yes.
I love it.
you.
And rub your heart. Right. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Elizabeth, I have a question about that same Telemann because you said, you know, play around with it. So I did. And the very end of it, I sort of assume one would end down by just looking at the last two measures, which is basically just the simple rhythm. You know, I'm in 440 pitch, but half note and then half note. And I was trying to figure out, is I kind of like to lean on the dominant down bow and then da-da-da up bow on the end. Is that legitimate? I mean, does that make sense?
It's a tricky, there's a number of possibilities. I've heard a lot of players to invent an anticipation in order to get themselves to a down bow at the end. I've seen some people just go and do an up bow that is necessarily a real release of energy, letting go of energy on the up bow, because it's very hard to be strong on an up bow. And I've done myself, just take another down bow. There's no real right or wrong solution. There's just the one that you find satisfying and that you can commit yourself to effectively.
But thank you, there's three good ideas.
We had a question. I think this is going back to the Bach from Garrett.
Uh-huh.
He asks about a mistake in the 6th line of the manuscript. Can I share again?
Yes, please.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He says he writes E flat in the key signature. Oh, here, yes, he has the extra flat in the right here.
What am I looking at? I'm looking at
the key signature and there's 2 flats.
Yes.
Is that a mistake?
Oh, yes. That is a very odd little thing, isn't it? That's very cool. I've never noticed that. Thank you so much. I love these things.
That's from Garrett.
Thank you, Garrett. That's fascinating. Yeah, because I mean, modern times, of course, you know, we have the 2 flats, but back then they didn't. That's so cool. Oh.
Hi.
Hi. That's a fabulous little find there. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for this wonderful, I've been here for all 4 of these. And I just opened up my camera and mic. And this has been a wonderful journey for me. So I really appreciate it. And I was going to wait until the social part to turn on my camera. But since you're addressing this question, I find this fascinating too. And I noticed that a lot of people these days are playing that E natural that you suggested there.
Uh-huh.
I think it is interesting. And but when I look at that E natural that's in question, I tend to lean towards the argument that it's a 6 chord, right? That it's coming off of a 5 chord and that it's a 6 chord. And then I also have a problem with the fact that the E natural and the bass, and I'm not sure if this is a problem I don't know enough about Baroque notation or how Bach notated things, but when I look at his keyboard works, etc., I don't see many instances where he will write, for example, he writes the 8th note E in the E natural, in the lower voice, and then that note value overlaps with that E flat in the upper voice, and that doesn't seem. So that to me seems suspicious that it might actually be an E flat, and that might be an instance where Bach simply forgot to do what he usually does, which is feed us those accidentals.
Right. Well, I see your point. There's a couple of things about that. I'm still pretty wedded personally to the notion that the line is far more interesting moving up to an E and then asserting the E flat later in that fourth beat, in passing in the ornament on its way to the D. I do think that's a compelling argument personally. The other thing is that with the slur as it is, the note value is you're never going to reiterate that E as you change bows for the high E flat, right? So you're never going to get a simultaneous cross relation.
Right.
I think that one of the reasons that people corrected it was because they couldn't believe that Bach would write anything resembling a cross relation. And in fact, I think that is a compelling affectual choice. I think this piece is incredibly tortured. It's kind of like an internal dialogue, a struggle, a terrible struggle inside the soul of somebody. Like if you look at the end of the first line, this kind of question. And it's interesting that the point of the question at that point is an E flat. Yam, E flat. And then this answering voice says, oh no, don't worry. Just E flat, it's just an E flat. Yam, da, dee, there it is again, da, 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 no big deal. And then the first voice comes back with, but what about the E natural? Why E natural? So there's this kind of the E flat has already set itself up at the end of the first line, being tooled and played with and brought up, tried to be assimilated at the very end of the line, and then it reasserts, to my mind, reasserts itself in this shocking form,
Okay.
and then gets truly more assimilated in passing through the E natural to the E flat to the D.
Would you say that in the context of how you're describing it, we need to understand what the harmony is on that second beat? Because if it's an E natural, I don't really know what the harmony is. I mean, I see it's. I mean, we have.
I think you need to understand what the harmony is affectually, and affectually it is shocking.
Okay. So it's not like we would detect, in the beginning of the bar, it's an F major 7 chord, right? Whatever that function is. And then it goes to, it looks like, sort of as something D major 7, which is sort of dominant 7th, right? And then dominant 7 can go to a 6 chord.
Let's see.
Yeah, the dominant 7 with the D, the D F sharp, the A is implied. Well, actually, so the D and the F sharp, so it's not a dominant 7. But if it is a D major chord, it functions as a dominant, and then the dominant would move to a 6 chord. And
I'm not finding your dominant that you're talking about a dominant. I don't see this dominant that you're talking about. Where do you mean?
Well, I guess I was wondering if the the notes preceding that E in the B.
Oh, I see what you mean. That the resolution of the B flat to the F sharp.
It's sort of a D major harmony, and the B flat at the beginning of the slur is a non-chord tone, an appoggiatura type note. That so the notes in that harmony are D and F sharp, which are outlining a D major harmony, which can reasonably go to the 6th chord, right?
Right.
And
So it should be it's just C minor 6th chord with a dissonant D, right?
Yeah.
With the appoggiatura of a D to the resolution of the C that you don't really get.
D, E flat, G, and there's a B flat in that beat as well. So it really seems to outline a 6th chord, and so I just don't. If it's an E natural in the bass, I don't quite know what to make of it, and so
It is a transformed 6th chord. It is a transformed 6th chord, I think, and I think it is particularly shocking. And I think the fact that it's shocking speaks to the basic affect of this piece, which I find is more, I think is considerably more tortured than some people play it as. Now, there's no question that it's entirely possible that Bach simply forgot to write the flat in. I just find it hard to process on the third bar of his venture of 6 sonatas and partitas in the most perfect way he could do that, and I do find the shock informative and moving.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess ultimately,
I was feeling this. I was, when I first started hearing people play it that way,
uh-huh.
I thought, okay, well, then there's something that I don't recognize as Bach, and he doesn't make mistakes, but I'm looking through the manuscript and I see that that thing in the key signature on the 6th line, and then I think, well, that's obviously a mistake.
Yeah.
It's he was following a certain tradition, right? Those church mode key signatures, but maybe just doing that out of a sense of conformity, and it slipped his mind when he was writing that 6th line. So then it makes me feel like, well, maybe he does make omissions or mistakes sometimes, and then I started thinking, well,
we can go round and round and round. Can you go scroll back up again, Lolly, just a little bit, so I catch that thing. It's also a poser to imagine writing that second beat on that line, writing that, and then within a few nanoseconds writing that high E flat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to stick with the process, right? I'm assuming he went from 8th note to 8th note, filling things. He didn't write parts separately when he was writing, I don't think, because they're pretty nicely lined up in the way he always does. Mm-hmm. And so there he is writing that, and then he writes the E flat literally less than a second later, right, in the upper voice. Yeah. It's pretty. It's a great thing. I've gotten pretty wedded to the E natural, but I can't say that he couldn't make a mistake. I can't. It's just. I already made the point, but
would it be if he had written the accidental there? Would it work? It works functionally, right?
Yeah, it's tedious. It's kind of tedious. It's less interesting of a hidden line, of a hidden chromatic line. The hidden chromatic line is more interesting. The shock value affectually is powerful on the E natural. Yes, he could put the E flat in there, absolutely. And then he's sitting on that for a full half bar.
Uh-huh.
It's a very long time for even in this slow pace for things to be sitting. It's to resolve to that D. So it's a long time, I think.
Okay.
There are lots of rhetorical, dialogue right before that. Tam pedal and this is the long section. Those are 2 little short fragments, and now we get the long utterance. So on that level, on a phrase structure level, I can make an argument that the E flat serves to some degree, at least fits in the long portion of the phrase. You'd have the short portion, ta 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 ta. That's one short, and then tam tiarum piram pam. That's another short fragment, and now you have the long thing, which is defined by, say, one long E flat. I can see that, but I can also see defining a long thing by a long chromatic move from E flat to E natural to D. Yeah. So, like I say, you can parse this. We could keep this up for another hour probably. It's a wonderful thing. And I remember when I first noticed that there was an E natural apparently written there about, 8 or 9 years ago. It took me a long time to suddenly notice it. Then my mind just went to work, constructing things. And that's what we do, right? As human beings, that's what our minds do. They want to find reasons for things to be. We're confronted with, like a coincidence or something. We say, what does it mean? What does it mean? It must mean something. It can't just be a coincidence. And my mind is kind of maybe doing that thing saying, oh, it can't just be a mistake, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, and I think that you can make cases for both. I'm very much in love with the E natural because it did ultimately transform my understanding of that passage and the whole sort of affect of the whole movement. So I
Another question I would have, if you don't mind, about that, if, I mean, I know that this is not built on a Passacaglia base, or maybe I don't know, but if it were, then I would expect the bass line to be descending in that uniform fashion. So it would be G, F, E flat, D, right? From the tonic down to the dominant.
well, if I grant you premise, yeah, but I don't think the premise is going to hold up. I don't think it is a Passacaglia base.
Right.
Just
Right. Yeah, it's not. It's not. So.
right. Yeah. Rules are meant to some degree to be broken for a good purpose. If there's a good purpose served by breaking a rule or doing the unexpected, if there's a good affectual purpose to be served by it, a Bach is not beyond or above doing such a thing.
And while we're here, since you know this so well, right there, right below that, he writes the slur on the lower group, on the third line, the first,
yes,
and he omits the slur on the top group, right? And I mean, we're probably just assuming that it's implied.
yes.
Right?
I do assume that. I think he sort of leapfrogs a little bit, right? He does the top line, then he puts the slur in the entering voice on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and then he puts it back in the top where there are no more sixteenths in the other voice. Yeah, I think it's implicit. I just want to say a cautionary word. Don't borrow trouble. Because the truth is you look at these pieces and you cannot play them exactly as they are written. Like the fugues are the primo example. Because you have a half note and then you've got 4 articulated eighth notes or 3 articulated eighth notes and 2 16th notes with a slur on them. There's no way you can play a solid note and then articulate on the other voice, right? It's not possible. So Bach has done the thing he does so well, which he's written perfect music. And here we are with our imperfect selves and our imperfect tools, and we're cast loose upon the landscape of Bach's inner perfection. And all we can do is worry it over, think it over, and do the freaking best we possibly can with it.
Can I ask one very quick last,
yeah.
right here with the score in front of us? And I have sometimes now students who will play because they're using the newer Barenreiter edition or the one that was published in the 80s, or there's even a 6th edition now, where they changed just before the very end of the second line. You see where the top voice we have F, D natural, E flat.
Yes.
And I'm used to thinking of the way Bach writes, the F and the D would be slurred together.
Yes, I
right?
agree.
And
it looks like it's the next two.
And so, but the newer Barenreiter editions have so-called, have gone ahead and corrected without even telling us.
Exactly.
And putting it in. And so people are now playing F and then slurring the D into the E flat. And that just seems so utterly because it's really like the F is an ornament, is a
Agitura to the E flat. Yep, I totally agree with you. No, right. All I can say is that if Barenreiter has put out 6 editions, a plague upon them. There's nothing wrong with the Bach. The Bach makes you think, right? You look at it, the Bach makes you think, and then you earn your interpretation and your understanding. You earn it from studying what he wrote, So I for the life of me, cannot figure out why anybody would read any of these pieces from anything but Bach's handwriting. And yes, he does throw curves at us right and left. I mean, the longer you look, the more you find, and the trickier it gets. And yeah, you should be making your peace with that in some way through study and all of that. I'm a huge fan of looking at this, what we're looking at right now, because yeah, it's challenging, and it should be. And who wants to be spoon-fed some other person who is not Bach making these decisions for us?
Right, right. So that one particular spot there, that top F really isn't more of an appoggiatura to the E. And I mean, in practice, in Baroque performance practice, which I am not an expert, I guess I'm used to thinking that these 2/16 notes on the beginning of a beat are the ones that are going to be slurred, right?
Yes, and I think it's not just that they're the first 2/16 notes, it's also that the gesture is without that little échappé, without that D. Tia-tam, right? That's the gesture.
Yeah.
So it's just an ornament of that first note, the D.
Right.
And as such, it kind of belongs to it.
That's why you have to do it,
yeah.
right?
No, I'm with you there.
And
sure.
and then so he just had to cram that slur in there somewhere, and that's where he could fit it on with his pen. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that actually, if you look at a number of similar places, you find that he didn't like to try to wedge the slur in amongst the notes. He thought it created a lack of clarity, and I think he just assumed you would be sensible about where that slur went.
If you look at the line directly above that, that's a case in point. The first two notes no longer directly above that.
Good point.
Yeah.
And it looks very, very similar. It looks very similar. The slur on the A looks very much like the slur on the D below. Yeah, good point. Yeah, so yeah, I just resent these editors still trying to monkey with it and say how it ought to be, when everybody should figure it out for themselves. There, I'm done.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Elizabeth, what I was going to say is it's fabulous that we have this original on the Bach. We don't have it for anybody else. I mean, we don't have much, and I'll look at some piece and I'll go, I wish I had the original. I love having these.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the most wonderful thing. Also, when you get around to like wanting to play all the cello suites on the violin or the viola, it's a great resource, because you can start looking at those hopelessly bad editions of the copies by Anna Magdalena and Peter Kellner, which are just like so inconsistent and so random and so disagreeing with each other that they're almost worthless. But you can draw on what you've learned from studying what he really did write for us violinists, right? We still have, and use what you've learned to make an effective choices in the cello suites. So if any of you guys, would any of you guys like to see these videos, because they're just adorable?
We can do that. It is almost 9 o'clock. And so some of us, Garrett's going to laugh at me because he's in New York, but it's way past my bedtime.
Right.
But yes, why don't we end with looking at those videos? Do we have any other social stuff to accomplish? That was really, really fun.
It was my pleasure. Really, it was just a hoot. I had a great time doing this.
So I'm not sure how you just wanted to listen to a little of the first one, right?
Yeah, basically, if you just play, I think I indicated how long.
I have to stop the share because I need to share with sound. Here we go. So stop me when it gets to the right spot, right?
Okay, yeah, it's just the opening prelude section where the angel coming down. So
I don't know why I'm not hearing it.
I'm hearing it.
Okay, good.
Okay.
How about
Okay, golly.
the next one?
Okay, this other one here is this is something I show to all my students at the conservatory in San Francisco, at the first class when we were all able to be together, which we weren't this year. But this is a perfect example of facial rhetoric. The guy has a super expressive face, and he gets every nuance of affect and shows it in his face. If you haven't heard this, it's a great one. Concerto for Face.
Oh, sorry, buffering.
Too bad.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really sorry.
No, it's probably not your fault. It sounds like it's one of those things.
That's a great face, though.
Yeah. If you need to find it, if we can't get it to come up, you just Google on YouTube, search for Concerto for Face.
And it's on the assets page, so everybody's got a link to it.
Yeah.
Oh golly.
Elizabeth, while this is on buffering, remember you were talking about the words and what to look up on Google, words for concerto symphonies, and I couldn't really write down what you said about what to look for.
I'm not sure what context you're talking. I'm trying to remember what I said. What was it about?
Like, let's say the unfinished symphony, and you were putting
Oh, yeah.
words. Yeah.
Yeah. Just Google made up words for classical themes. And that is that.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's the perfect music to do that to.
Yes, it is. This is brilliant. Can I say goodbye to everybody? Because people are leaving and I'm there. There you are. Thank you for coming and joining us in this. I had a ball doing it. It was lovely to see you all. And I hope to catch up with some of you somehow, other times.
Definitely.
Please.
We're going to be sending out a follow-up email that has a survey. We'd love to hear some of your thoughts about this, particularly in terms of what we might want to do along these lines in the future. So I hope you fill that out.
Yes,
and
please.
keep in touch with us. And I'm just so grateful to everybody for coming and to Elizabeth for giving us this fantastic journey through a wonderful way to create an imaginative space around this great repertoire.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you,
Bye-bye,
Lolly.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.